Let's switch to federal politics now, and it's just 2 more sleeps until the Eden-Monaro by-election, and most pundits have got it too close to call, although a government win would be one for the history books, no doubt. Earlier today, I caught up with the Liberal candidate, Fiona Kottvoes, who's trying to wrench the seat from Labor. Fiona Kottvoes, thanks for joining us. You're outside a pre-polling booth today. What's the feeling you're getting on the booth?
Look, it's a very slow booth. We're here at Jerrabomberra, which is near Queen Vianne. It's slow, there's not a lot of people coming through, but they're coming through steadily and people are voting.
Well, are you confident that Nationals voters will be preferencing you and vice versa? There was the story in The Australian suggesting that John Barilaro supporters, the New South Wales Nationals leaders, a person who was going to run for pre-selection in this seat and didn't, suggestions that he and his supporters might be urging people to preference Labor ahead of you.
Well, both John Barilaro and Trevor Hicks have made it very clear that the preferences for the Nationals are going to the Liberals.
So you're very, very confident about that, despite some sort of, obviously, some bridges burned in the past?
I am. Both of them have made that statement very clearly this morning.
OK, tell us what you see as the major issues in the campaign. I know the Labor Party's been focusing strongly on the bushfires and climate change.
So the major issues, when I'm talking to people and listening to them, what people are telling me across the electorate are around recovery and rebuilding of communities after the fires, the floods, after the ongoing drought, and also COVID-19. And the other is around rebuilding our economy, particular focus on jobs, so through small business, through farming and agriculture. And we've had some great announcements that have been supporting jobs in the last few days around Snowy 2.0, defence jobs, and in primary industry.
On Snowy 2.0, is it really plausible, sensible, wise to be spending, upwards of $10 billion and producing no additional generation for the country?
Snowy 2.0 is a fantastic project. What it does on a federal level and a national level is it firms up the renewables. So that means that the solar power that's being generated, the wind power that's being generated at the moment when there's excess power and it can't be stored, Snowy 2.0 is effectively a big battery bank, and it stores that power so that it can be used later. And that's a really positive thing.
But a $10 billion battery for $10 billion, you could build a whole heap of power stations, whether they're renewable or gas-fired or, in fact, hydro schemes for $10 billion.
So, Chris, this is the most cost-effective battery that there is. It is better and more cost-effective per unit of stored power than any of the other ones that are available. It's a really great project in terms of energy, and locally for Eden-Monaro, it's great in terms of the jobs that it produces, 4,000 jobs overall, 2,000 at the peak period, all of which is very positive.
Don't you think we're going to need some additional energy at some stage, some additional generation, rather than just storing it?
We need to be able to do both. What Snowy 2.0 does is it enables energy to be stored so that we can power 500,000 houses for a week. Now, that's a really positive thing. If we're going to create more renewable power and going to generate more renewable power, we need to be able to store it for when it's used. I live in a house that's off-grid. I know that during the day we get solar power being generated, and I know that I have to store that for night, and I have to store it for when there is no sun. So having something like Snowy 2.0, it underpins the use of renewable power.
And why do we want to use all that renewable power? Do we think it's going to change the climate?
What we need to do is have a suite of different sources of power and have a market-driven approach to reducing our emissions. And that's a really positive thing. That's what's set out in the roadmap for energy, and I...
Sorry, Fiona. So you support the Paris Agreement and the reduction of the greenhouse gases in Australia. Do you believe that that's going to change our climate?
So I believe that the climate is changing and that humans are contributing to it, and we need to do several things in response, one of which is reduce our emissions. We have a plan to do that, and at the moment we are one of only a handful of countries that are on track to achieving the targets that we've set. That's great. There are a whole lot of other strategies that we need to take. We need to look at greater resilience, we need to look at more adaptation and strategies in those two areas as well, and there's a range of things in those areas.
Yeah, there's no doubt Australia's doing its bit because we're spending a fortune on it, but the point is global emissions are increasing, so obviously it's not going to change our climate.
Chris, across Australia, or across Eden Monaro, when I'm talking to people, what people are talking to me about is how do we build more resilience in our communities. It's things like more jobs. It's things like in agriculture, looking at more water so that we can handle the droughts better and produce through the droughts. Those are the sort of things that people are talking to me about, and those are the sort of things that I'm really focused on.
Yeah, another issue that Labor's talked about is ABC funding. They say that they will reverse the minor cuts to ABC funding, if you like, the minor efficiencies to ABC funding. Do you think that the ABC should have additional funding?
Well, at the moment, the ABC is getting more than $1 billion a year, and that's increasing every year over the next 3 years. I think that every media agency across Australia would probably love to have a guaranteed $1 billion plus every year for the next 3 years. Most media outlets are having their budgets cut, their workforces slashed. ABC hasn't had a cut. ABC is getting $1 billion a year. There's an additional $40 million that's been going in to support the ABC in rural and regional areas as well, and the coverage in those areas. That's really positive.
Has the ABC been fair to you in this campaign, or have they tried to portray you as a climate change dinosaur?
Look, I think all media agencies have covered the campaign in different ways, and that's up to them how they choose to cover it.
It sure is.
But for me,
what's
really important is to get my... Look, the ABC is just one of the many agencies that's covering this, and I'm comfortable with the coverage that I've received.
Oh, that's good. That's reassuring to hear. I just want to ask you one other thing, Fiona Kotvojs, and that is you ran in this seat at the last federal election. You went close to winning it, yet when it came up for pre-selection again during this by-election, because of the by-election, the retirement of Mike Kelly, the Labor member, you had two powerful male figures from state politics, the Transport Minister Andrew Constance and the Nationals leader and Deputy Premier John Barilaro, put up their hands for pre-selection before eventually resisting or declining to pursue the seat. Do you think they would have done that if you were a bloke?
Look, I'm very proud that in the Liberal Party we have a democratic process where the members get to choose who is going to be their local representative. So what happens is anybody who is a member can nominate, and then the members choose. So, you know, anybody who was interested got the opportunity to nominate, and that's great.
But do you think that you were fairly treated, given you just run in the campaign last year, almost won, obviously did a good job, and yet you had these two blokes from town talking about knocking you off? Surely you had rights to that seat, and I'm just wondering whether you thought you might have been poorly treated, essentially from a party that needs female candidates.
Not at all. Every member has the right to stand for pre-selection, and the members across the electorate get to choose who they want as their representative. The members across this electorate chose me, and that's the key thing. What I'm really proud is that our party has a process where the members get to choose. Nobody has a right to stand for any seat, but the members in the party get to choose. Now, that wasn't done by Labor. Labor's candidate has been just placed in the electorate since at least 2007, and the members in that party haven't had that choice. I'm proud that the Liberal Party gives the members the choice and that they chose me. And I'm really happy to represent them in this election.
Fiona, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck on Saturday.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much.
She wasn't going to criticise the ABC or her party or the climate policy, was she? Well done, Fiona Kotvojs.